Hello, everybody, and welcome to another installment of the Realeyes The World Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about role playing and social conditioning. So, I titled this podcast episode "Life: The Role Playing Game." Um, Essentially, what we don't realize is that we are playing in a world that's based on roles and ideas that have been imposed on us from the very get-go. Um, this is passed down from generation to generation. Your parents teach you how to pretty much live. We go to school. Society teaches us how to live. If you're in a culture, a particular culture, that culture teaches you how to live. Um, the media, there's a lot of influences on what we do and who we are or who we think we are until we come to an awakening where we realize that the whole time we've really just been trying to fulfill a role. And in my case, for example, that role was not necessarily who I was. My ego thought that that's who I was, but in reality, and what I know now, I was just trying to live up to a standard that an idea planted in my head at some point in my life that wasn't realistic to live up to. So, as I'm saying here, majority of our life is ideas that have been fed to us. Um, and these ideas are ones that all of society agree upon. So, we can take language, for example. The English language I'm speaking now, I can talk to you and you can listen because we have an agreement of the definition to those words. Similarly, person to person, and we try to define ourselves and define each other. We have that kind of mutual agreement, and so it's an interesting game because I struggled with this all my life, and that who am I versus who people think I am, and it kind of gave me an identity crisis, and then to throw in there the idea of who I wanted to be. So as far as the roles, again, these are who we think we're supposed to be. Now, these ideas, like, they come from your parents initially. So, the first few years of your life, you don't really have any other influence other than your parents or your family or your guardians. And those people teach you how to live. They teach you, for example, I'm Ricardo. Ricardo, you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to eat with your hands. You're supposed to use a fork. Um, don't hit. Be nice to people. Now, some of those have some ethical background, right? You don't want to use violence. Violence against other beings in general is not good. Stealing. Those are some general principles, but other things like don't touch that. That's dirty. These are things that are kind of also foundational as well. These are common sense topics based on what we know. That we pass down survival techniques. Um, what else? Okay. When it comes to preferences, you know, we teach boys to like more masculine colors and girls to teach more feminine colors. But really, by definition, those are ideas. You know, a lot of people will tell a boy he's supposed to like blue over pink. And these are just ideas that we are imposing on children. Um, what else is there? boys playing with Barbie dolls versus girls playing with Hot Wheel cars. I said those backwards on purpose, but those are kind of things that we pass the idea down from our growing up, and perhaps that's from our grandparents and our great grandparents, and it's so down far down the line, and then society as well. So society also will back these ideas, and when you get into topics of homosexuality, um, uh, the whole gender-based thing, and I'm not saying transgender this and that, but more so boys are supposed to do this, girls are supposed to do that. Uh, and so then there's our first role. So now, okay, I'm Ricardo. I'm supposed to be a boy. What is a boy now? Now that I have an idea of some of these biases that I'm supposed to conform to, now I'm basically going to fulfill the rest of my life trying to fill that boy role, and then eventually a man role. And it even evolves as you get older. Um, so that begins with our parents, and then our family, immediate family, distant family. This is all influences that we're going to get as we're growing up. Eventually, we get old enough, and then we go to school. Now we are in this student role. So, the student role, now we're supposed to listen to the teachers. And as a student, really our creative thinking is, at least in America, in public schools, from my generation, I'll say it that, the creative thinking is kind of shut down in that we're basically taught books. Books that we could read on our own if we had an interest, but that's not even allowed. It's basically you're being taught general art, general history, government, a lot of things that are considered general education. Um, and so as that role as a student, you're taking in all this scripted information now, and your role as a student to listen to the teacher, to try to be good and set a role for some people. Me example, I wanted to set roles and high standards. Not, it was mainly for myself, but now that I look back on it, it could also influence the other students. Oh, I want to get a higher grade than him, or the teacher gives him stars or candy, whatever the little rewards are for good behavior. And so then you start, and you see right there being a role model and the role playing. Now you start to set a standard, or that label of being a student and being a good student, um, for the other students. And so right from the get-go, just a little recap here. You start off learning your gender. Okay, this is what boys do. This is what girls do. Then you get sent off to school, and now this is what I'm supposed to learn. And then as you get through the grade school, now for some of us, college was almost mandatory. Like, this is a proven formula. After school, you go to college. And so you continue in that student role with the promise of a good job after, and whatnot, because you went to college. And you can find all kinds of articles over the internet about people who are successful without college, people who went to college and can't find jobs, or and really that's because we're still stuck in that role where we're trying to fulfill the okay, I went to school. For example, for me, I started off an associate's degree with mathematics and physical science. I had a change of heart, but say I had graduated, and then I had that change of heart, I'm not necessarily going to put my entire effort into finding a math job or a physical science job, um, if I'm not into it, and regardless of the paper. And that's where a lot of us get this sense of entitlement. Oh, I went to college, I should have a job. Um, and it doesn't work like that. It's really what you put into it is what you get out of it. And so when you're stuck in this role, okay, I am a college student. I graduated from college. Now you're trying to suck in that identity. You're playing that role, but at some point we need to realize, and even the employers on the other side are role playing, and that okay, this is where they get that sense of entitlement. Just because you graduated doesn't mean you're qualified. Um, you're stuck in the role of, hey, I'm a college student, a bachelor, have a bachelor's in this, and the employer is, hey, I'm a cybersecurity company, and I don't care what you have. And that's how a lot of people in the information technology field actually get hired based on certifications and not college graduation certificates, so to say. You could do a 6 month course or shorter to get a degree, or I'm sorry, a certification in a particular area of IT and go get a job. Whereas somebody just put 4 years in and got this bachelor's degree and can struggle. I had that issue. And I'll tell you that I was in that group of people identifying with their college graduate role and kind of feeling entitled. Okay, I did this. Where's my job? And so it took me a while to get a job with that actual degree. Um, so that's what I can speak of from experience up to now. I'm not retired. I don't have a business, but I can tell you the basic functioning of roles based on just growing up until post graduation from college. Now, during that whole time, you have your peers and your friends, and everybody around you that are also telling you and judging you what you should and shouldn't be doing. So, for example, when it comes to things that are popular or cool, or versus unpopular and not cool, while the majority may be lost in materialistic items or things like social media, if you do something that goes against the grain, you'll have your peers or friends telling you, "Hey, don't do that. That's not cool," or "Hey, don't do that. That's not what the popular kids do." And then you start. Some of us get infatuated with becoming popular, or the whole social hierarchy, and that's how you get kids that are bullied. When they're seen as weaker or not so important to some extent. This is because we're all role playing. Oh, hey, you're not worth anything because you're not with the cool kids. And again, this is all based on playing roles. Now, when you get into the adult world, you soon realize, oh, well, that stuff wasn't really worth anything. Um, there's movies out there. I can only speak from watching the movies. I don't know how many people are actually in this mindset, but there are people who you could consider loners during their school life, and then when they graduate, they kind of continue that lifestyle and alienate themselves because now it's embedded in their brain that they'll never fulfill the role of fitting in. And, what is fitting in to begin with? It's a social agreement of you know I guess having commonality with people, but um it it really doesn't amount to anything once you awaken to that. It's it's all, it's like a masquerade. Everybody's putting on different masks. And so, on top of who we think we are, you can go out to a business, whether it's a restaurant, electronics store, clothes store, and then you start playing another role. You're playing the customer role, and the business side, they're playing the customer service or the waiter or whoever that interface is for the business. They're playing a role. So now we have there's multiple roles in life that we play, and it you go to a business, and what do you expect? You expect top-notch quality service in exchange for your money. So again, it's just another role. We don't look past the roles. A lot of us don't look past the roles to see the human being on the other side. And even on the other side, the customer representative, whether they're a waiter, cashier, whatever the case is, some of them are also role playing as well. I mean, you'll go into some places and you'll get exceptional service and be impressed and wowed and satisfied. And on the other end of it, you could have the worst service and not get what you wanted and have complaints. Some people go so far to be offended that their role wasn't fulfilled that, they go calling corporate or trying to get people fired. And they really take offense to it, and that, hey, I went into your store and that employee wasn't role playing with me. And reality, and we all notice, some of us have good days and bad days. Some of us wake up on the wrong side of the bed. Some of us are just more generally happy than others. It's a whole basket of different people out there. But we never take that in consideration because we're so busy role playing. And so I mentioned the employee. So think of the employee and the boss. Now, the employee is also playing two roles at once. He's the customer interface, the representative or cashier, waiter, whoever providing the service. And they're also the employee to the company. And so you can see how this all just builds up, and all the while we're trying to figure out who we are or where we might fit in, and trying to fulfill roles that some of us have no business being in because we're following a script. Go to school, go to college, get this job. None of it really tells you, hey, listen to what your inner being is really saying. There's a lot of people out there with creativity who aren't given the tools or taught how to express it because we follow this script. A lot of entrepreneurs and successful business owners are where they are because they've found something that they jive with, that's on the frequency is on the same plane as they are, and so that's how they do really well. But for those of us who are caught in this role playing, if we come from a poor family, that might be all we know because that's how we were raised. We only know how to be poor. We could be really smart, have some good characteristic qualities, but we don't get to express them because, oh, I'm not at that level. I'm not at the level where these rich kids have more than me, and I'll never be there because that's not where I fit in society. I gotta play the poor person role. And you see how that mindset, even if you don't say it out loud, it's subliminally and unconsciously set in. And if it, unfortunately, there's a lot of unconsciousness out there, and if your parents are unconscious, they may be imposing that role onto you as well. Hey, you can't do that because we can never afford that. And when you start instilling those ideas, you can't do that. You'll never be. Then that's your mindset, because you are who you think, or you are what you think. And so if you're so busy playing the poor person role, how will you ever break out of it? That's also it's true for the other end of the spectrum where you have rich folks. So you could have a rich person, and with not the smartest kids in the world, but they could be rich because the mindset of how they're raised. Hey, uh, trying to think of a general last name. I'll just pick John Doe. So you're a Doe. Us Does are rich people, and being doing anything less is unacceptable. Just having that very foundational thought as your role as a Doe, John Doe, that it changes your whole experience with life. So now, John Doe with maybe 100 IQ, or however you want to measure it, not the brightest one out of the bunch, is running a multi-million dollar business, and he might be doing well, or he does really well at it, but anything else outside of that he might not be so great at. And yeah, you don't need to be smart to be rich. You don't need to be smart, or you don't have to be dumb to be poor. It's all based on these roles and how we're conditioned. And so, we get into social conditioning. Um, and this goes in with basically how I explained how we grow up in our different roles. This is how the world tells us to be. This is what the world tells us to be. What they teach us in school. Maybe you're religious. Or you were raised religiously. So then, what that religion tells you you're supposed to be, and your misinterpretation of it. Because I do believe all religions have a foundational basis for awakening the person, but religion has transformed into God being some kind of figure, whereas God was never really a physical person. Um, but that's a whole different topic. And then there's the culture were raised in. So if you go to Asia compared to America, there's a whole different culture. Like I believe uh, I thought there's some kind of hand gesture which was offensive. I can't remember what it is, but we'll just go on that general basis. Where a hand gesture here in America is something as simple as saying hi, where in another country like Asia it could be offensive, like saying somebody to bugger off. So that's also another form of conditioning where, and you can, just that idea alone, you can see what's normal for us is not normal for somebody else, or could have a whole total different meaning based on how they're conditioned, what they all have that general agreement of different actions or words to mean. And then we also have the media. So the media will condition us. Um, and the media is more, I would say, a short duration conditioning. So, for example, we have the whole coronavirus pandemic going on right now. And initially, when it started off, I would say there was a lot of fear mongering. Um, there is truth to the virus, but the way the media puts it out, it influences us. Before this whole coronavirus thing, the last thing I can remember is like Black Lives Matter, where a lot of black folks in America felt like they could be shot at any moment by a police officer because of how common the media portrayed it to be. And these are things that we're conditioned to. So, again, with the whole role playing, if you think you're being undermined and forced into poverty and that idea is imposed on you when you're young, you're conditioned to think that way. And then when you grow up, who knows what that idea evolves into. It takes a lot of different forms. But it's still the foundation of I'll never be as good as somebody else because of, you know, you could say the color of your skin. Um, or I was watching a show recently and it was based on the family name. These are things that happen out there, and it's all based on what we feed each other and how we raise our kids, what society around us feeds us. Um, Social media right now, I would say, is a very big um, influence, because you go on Facebook, and a lot of people do this. They will take news from Facebook, unvetted. Maybe it's a meme or somebody's YouTube video being shared around. Somebody could caption it or put a comment description above it, misinterpreting it or clipping out specific parts of the video and only showing you certain things. And this alone right here starts to circulate biased information, and in some cases is worse than the actual news media, because this is an individual's idea circulating versus, one company's agenda circulating news. And at least with news media, you can kind of take what is actual news for what it is, because multiple outlets are saying the same thing, although they may have slight differences or different opinions. And so, based on those opinions and how they deliver the message versus the actual message, can condition us to lean, to certain ways, like with politics, whether I'm going to be Democratic or Republican, or maybe even like the stimulus bill. I don't I don't look into it too much, but I'm pretty sure uh, certain news outlets, only focus on certain parts of the bill and not the bill in its entirety. And so based on their political agendas, they were either slandering or promoting the bill because it catered to the same political party, or it didn't. And again, now we're role playing, and then on top of the role playing, and the role playing being Democratic or Republican, and so on top of that, then they're dishing out information that's biased, which will condition either political parties, and that could be in that, yeah, so and so news company said this, and I'm also that same political party, and so this is the information I'm going off of. This is what I'm being conditioned to. And it works on the other end. If you're on the opposing party, now, you're defending your role, and you're being conditioned to defend your role, whatever political party it may be, and it's one big cluster. So, with awakening, and for me, my role with that I was trying to fulfill before I had an awakening, was that I have to be the best. Have to be the best at anything that I do. And so if you've listened to other episodes of my podcast, uh, I limited myself to what I did. So I selectively, would choose things that I could do, that I know I could do, versus what I don't know how to do and what I might fail at. So with the things that I would do, I would try to excel, be the best at, and just try to fulfill this role of being number one. Always comparing, always judging, and it's, I don't know where the idea came from exactly, other than growing up with with some pressure to do good at everything in school, and I guess that idea evolved into doing good at everything in life. Um, Little did I know that was actually, feeding the ego. And I already told you I was selective of what I would do versus what I wouldn't do. So, the ego, it doesn't like to be hurt. And it likes to feel very real. So, as a role of being the best at everything, that was only true, and that I selected things that I could do and perhaps excel at, and I shied away from doing things that I may fail at or not be the best at. Um, and so, in trying to be that role, and I said this before, I missed out on certain things in my life because I would shut down opportunities, which were solely based on materialistic gains, financial gains. I, in fact, do not work right now because I found, after my awakening, I found I was in a field that was strictly for financial reasons. I wasn't necessarily doing something that I like to do. Um, so now, I have an idea of what I'd like to do, and so I'm entertaining different ideas on how I can fulfill that greater purpose. And so this isn't something as in role playing, or feeding the ego. This is something I've meditated on, not necessarily meditated on, but with meditation, you allow space in your mind for new ideas and positive thinking and all kinds of creative stuff. Um, but this is something that I feel that is in line with my inner being. And as I started off the podcast, not role playing and being shied away from your inner being. So it starts to peel away like layers of an onion as you have an awakening. And so this whole role playing and social conditioning observation is just one of those layers. Once you realize how caught up you are as in playing any role in your life, whether you're being a parent, whether you're being a child to a parent, whether you're being a customer, whether you're being a customer representative, if you're being a manager, you got to realize that yes, you do have your responsibilities in those roles, but at the end of the day, we're all playing a game of fulfilling the role. And no matter how serious you may take your job or take being a parent or whatever role you're trying to fill in, it's only a portion of your life, and it's not your entire life. And for me, that was my biggest setback, and that I thought it was my entire life. And I could be pretty cutthroat at times, disregarding other humans' feelings, or, you know, not showing any sympathy or empathy, and really being like a robot. Um, and just looking out for myself. Um, and that's not to say, oh, if you're role playing, that's selfish. But I forgot the whole human aspect of life, and that's, sharing this planet with everybody. No matter how self-centered you may feel or be, or selfish you are, none of this matters without anybody else on the planet. You can't be the most rich person in the world if there's nobody else to compare to, if there's nobody else to praise you for it. Or you see how role playing, it takes two to tango, pretty much. There's no rich without poor, and there's no business without customers. There's no child, or I guess there's no parent without the child. This is all, it kind of goes back to the duality of things. That it's all dependent on the other factor, and really they're not opposites, but they're complements. They're complementary. So when take some of these ideas into your day-to-day life and just observe them. You don't have to go out there and start preaching this, but I give you guys this awareness because these are things that are hiding right under our nose, and for whatever reason and however, it's a majority of us are raised to be unconscious or grow up to be unconscious to this stuff. It can be problematic, especially for people who take things very serious, as in myself. My role was nearly life or death, in that not fulfilling my role was like it was a very big letdown, hurt my ego, felt like life wasn't worth living. But you drop those roles, you go look outside, look at the trees growing, look at a river flowing, just look at nature in general, and look at how nature is not playing any roles. Sure, you might have bees and flowers, and the flowers depend on the bees, but that's all part of a process. Role playing is not part of a process. And so, with that, I want to leave one last message of the importance of, just showing some love. Even if you're shy to show a little bit of love, just showing some love and compassion, it goes a very long ways. That's how some people's days are made, with a simple thank you or a simple compliment. They may be having the worst, they feel like they're having the worst day, and somebody gives them some kind of positivity, and it goes a long way. When you break role to be a human with another human, it's priceless. Okay? So, thank you everybody for listening. If whatever media outlet you're following me on, or watching me, or listening to me, show some likes, some comments, subscribe or follow. I say this at the end of every podcast, and that it goes a long way to help promote and have my content show up more in different search results. It's all algorithm based. So if you should show me some love, we can get the message out there to more people, and share it. If you know somebody who needs to hear any of these podcast episodes, one in particular, send it to them. Send them a link. And again, it all helps in spreading awareness to the unconscious world that we live in. All right, guys. So we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you.